Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderEd, Blender HD if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, June 27th. And you know what we do on Mondays? We spend Mondays with McCool. James McCool, the co-author with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour DFS Masterclass that you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Get your thumbs ups in on your way through the door. I see Suki Singh's here as early as usual. Doug Montgomery too. We talking a nice 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Just generally what we do on Mondays. It's kind of like we regroup for the week. What's going on? What's been happening? James, you've been working on stuff for the new edition. We're coming out with a sequel. If you didn't already know, the 4 advanced players version of the theory of DFS with more application-based learning. Obviously, I would suggest you pick up the first one because without the first one, you may not understand some of the stuff in the second one. But that should be out end of July, early August, and we'll be reaching out if you're in the RotoGrinders Premium Discord. Okay, you're part of the Blenders Game Theory channel. I answer questions in there. If you want to talk to me, that's the best place to get just direct access to me. So subscribe to RotoGrinders Premium. Any package, doesn't matter. It could be combo, it could be one sport. It doesn't matter what it is. And we'll also need some tools testers. So I already posted in there that at some point I'm going to get 2 or 3 people that different levels of Excel knowledge. Like it's someone that knows Excel very well, someone that's like familiar, and then someone that has like almost has never used Excel ever. Just so we get a sense, because in addition to the new, it'll be like somewhere between 10 and 15 hours of audio. And James, you're building some Excel tools that I was testing over the weekend to check the probability of my duped lineups in MMA. And let's just say the first run didn't work out that well, but you fixed it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes model building is more of a art than science, right? Like sometimes you want to play around with things. So that was, if you have a subscription over at Pater, I have an MMA model now that is built Blender a lot off of the logic that you utilize when you're building out your leverage stuff and utilizing more of like a baseline set of leverage rather than an actual projection. So I took that idea. I built out an MMA model as well. And in that MMA model, I have a little lineup building thing that you can put together a lineup. You can just hand build it in the sheet. And then it'll show you can put in the average field. You can put in the field size for like the contest year. And like if it was the $15, it was like 31,000 entries or something like that. And then it'll show you a projection of how many duplications you are going to have on that lineup. So the first run of it, I was like, man, I'm going to make this cool. I'm going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to make this like this really awesome long formula and function, and it's going to look great, and I'm going to be able to brag about it. And I put together that whole run, and the formula sucked. It was so bad. It was way over projecting the amount of dupes that it was going to have. And I sent it over to Jordan, and Jordan was like, no, this is terrible.
It's just right. I don't even have to do the math to know that it was right, because I put in my entire 100 lineup set for large field, and my lowest duped lineup was like 24 times, and I'm like this ain't I mean, like I just tell these numbers are wrong. It's like it's a 49-1 lineup with 3 sub 20% owned players and no main event fighter, and I'm like, maybe this is duped 2 or 3 times, but I think this is more likely to be unique. And you're telling me it's going to be duped 22 times or something. And I'm like, this is that. But at least from looking through the lineups, you were from what I could tell directionally,
right?
Like if I would have like divided everything by 22 or something, like then I think it would have been made more sense.
And that was the crux of it, right? And I asked even in our DMs, you were like, no, this is wrong. And I'm like, okay, look, it's fine if it's wrong. If it's like way over, that's fine. But is it at least directionally accurate? And you said yes. I'm like, okay, that's good enough to know like, okay, I need to tweak some globals. I need to redo a couple things here. That's fine. So after the fact, I had a couple guys that tested it out, and I had them send me over their actual dupes and their CSVs so that I could measure and get like a true reading of it. So I redid that, and now the formula is correct. It goes off of like the very basic product of the player ownerships, but then I was able to get some extra variables in there that make it a bit more accurate. So one of the CSVs that I had for testing, he had way too many uniques. And I guess you can't have way too many uniques, but like he had way more uniques than he actually wanted to have, right? And so he had like 64 uniques, and the new logic that I had for checking a portfolio here had him at 53 as projection. So I'm pretty happy with that. But that's one of the tools that we're going to be including in the new course, is being able to check your duplications and being able to put in your portfolio of lineups that you plan to upload into either MMA or PGA or any showdown. This is a really, really helpful tool for showdown. This is going to be something that is included in there, so you can check and say, okay, well, with this lineup set, I'm only projected to have 5 unique lineups and only like 10 lineups under 10. So I really need to get more unique. It's something that I've been working really hard on. That there's a lot of other things that we're going to have in there, but this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be putting in there, is stuff that makes it so you are able to build more plus EV lineups and build more portfolios of lineups that you can actually make money with, rather than being part of a 125 train that takes down first place and banks a tournament for like $7.
Right, and this applies. You'll be making it for showdown contest also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's going to be built. There's going to be this for this kind of tool isn't quite as good for things like NFL or MLB or things like that, where ownerships typically are not very high and there's more players, correlation is involved. But for things like PGA, MMA, and any showdown slate, this is going to be a really, really valuable tool. And there's going to be some other kind of like nice bells and whistles in there, showing you a couple things regarding your projections for the lineups and where you hold the most leverage and stuff like that. But the basic idea behind this is, am I building for enough dupes and under 5s to make this set of lineups worthwhile?
Right. It's basically a more advanced version of my combo calculator that I use in Google Sheets. And let me tell you, as someone who's considers themselves a 3 out of 10 in Excel, the utilization of what you sent over to me was very, very simple. Very, very. Basically, you cut and paste. All you need is the slate file from DraftKings or from any source, and then your lineups file, and just like, as long as you have basically the fighters and the salaries, you cut and paste into the one zone, and then you take your lineups and you cut it into another sheet, and then you go to the other sheet and it shows you everything. The only thing that I would suggest, I'll say it live on the air, is that can you that so you can make the change. Can you normalize? Can you auto convert or strip out the percentage symbol in ownership? Because depending on where you're importing and exporting from, some people have it as a percent, and some people have it as a decimal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Yep. Because let's just like where it exports from my sheet is a percentage. So like if I put it in a percentage in your sheet, it gives me it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, because it's looking for a number. It's looking for 0.28, not 28%. So like that, I could see how new users, like I could convert that. Like what I did is I just converted it. So like I could do that manually. So that's fine. But I can understand people that aren't as familiar with Excel will do that and go, but I'm putting in the percentages.
Yeah.
And then nothing happens. And then you see dupes it says all your lineups are unique. And I'm like, that's right.
Yeah. It's that's easy enough. It would just be a translation. But yeah, that's one of the things that I struggle with the most as model builder, is building things that are easy to use. That's like, it's so hard. So that makes me feel better that it was pretty easy.
Right. Other than that, it was like but that's how we want these tools to be. That these Excel tools. There are these major tools? Are these a lot of things you could end up working out in lineup HQ? It's not. It's like we're not reinventing anything. These aren't like special. It's just little things to make your time more efficient, right? To help you, so you don't have to go through combinations. You don't have to run 600 lineups and then manually eliminate one here. This one's too on. This one's too low projected. Whatever that you could just kind of cut and paste it in Excel and have it do it for you, and then re-upload it and then do whatever the hell you want with it. So like something that would normally take you 5 or 10 minutes now takes you under 30 seconds. So like we're kind of trying to improve your time more than anything. Grant Brown in the chat about the MMA slate, because it was interesting that the top 2 optimals on Saturday were not played, even though it was only a 12-fight card. So the top 2 optimals, the optimal was the second optimal, because Nerd and Becky with the 40, there was a 47-8 lineup that was optimal, and the second best line was 49-2. But he's asking, hypothetically, if you did the product ownership, it should have been duped on average 10 times, but it wasn't. It was literally not even played, so it wasn't even unique. It literally wasn't in the contest, and that was primarily due to construction, and that's why I wanted to point out. I wish I took my own advice, James, for all of my 100 lineups. I didn't, and I could have gotten to that 49-2 lineup. I could have gotten to, because my hot take of the week in the expert survey, two weeks in a row, my hot take has come true.
Oh, so you've binked every tournament 2 weeks in a row?
No, because there's way too many combos of these types of lineups that you can't make them.
Sure.
Only one 9K salary fighter makes the optimal lineup. Now, obviously, the winning lineup had 2 9K fighters, but that wasn't the optimal lineup. You didn't have to play Nurmagomedov. So yeah. The main reason that 49-2 lineup, I was shocked it wasn't. It seemed like it should have been played. It's not like it was that ridiculous. It's just the ownership of the 9K fighters, especially the 9,500 Nurmagomedov, the 9,300 Rachmanov, and the 9,100 Sarukin, was just so dramatically high that there were so many more constructions of two 9K lineups, but had one of those 3. When in fact you needed none of those. You needed Rachmanov. You needed one. You need the $9,300 guy, who's the lower owned of those 3 9K fighters. So like in order to get to that lineup, pretty tough to do if you're playing one. Like there are many combinations that you can make that only has one 9K fighter in it, and I didn't make enough. I did not make enough. I didn't make enough of them. Right? I could have. Once I saw that was the optimal, I was like, oh, I could have gotten there. I made money. On MMA, I made a little money anyway, because I didn't have much of the main event favorite, and he lost. So like, that's always good when he's like one of the most owned fighters on the entire slate. Doug Montgomery. We'll go to this other thing. Okay, last week, you could always type your questions into YouTube chat. We're not just here, me and James, talking amongst ourselves. We could, but we don't have to. Doug Montgomery says, last week I asked about the FanDuel 100-man FanDuel the experiment, quote, and I'll talk about that, on why you put one entry in and you say you're only building one lineup. So my question is about using 3 entries or 2. Is it better to max out? That has nothing to do with my experiment, Doug. I'm not going to play duplicated lineups into a progressive payout GPP. So I'm building one lineup to play in all 100-mans, all 20-mans, all small field GPPs. So I'm not gonna duplicate myself. The whole purpose of this experiment is that the duplication and correlation between lineups in the field gives you more equity. You want to be at the least correlative to the rest of the field while still maintaining the highest projection. So why the hell would I want to do that to myself by playing the same 2 lineups in? If anything, I'd play 3 different lineups that were nowhere near correlated to each other while still maintaining a high projection. And maybe that's the second phase of this experiment. But no, I'm On both sites for this quote experiment, I'll show you the past week, I'm up $2,192. Okay, it's a 16% ROI. And of course, the first day I could almost scrap because I don't think I even played it well. And of course, this is also a very extremely small sample size. I'm playing 3-man and 5-man type contests where you're only expected to cash 20 to 33% of the time. So like 2 out of 3, like in a week, if I have 3 winning days in a week, that's profitable. So I should expect to lose 4 out of 7 days as it is. So going by a 7-day sample is kind of 1, 2, 3. I had 3 winning days out of 7, but one was much bigger than the other because I went on both sites and 2 different slates. Because this test technically isn't 7 days. This is like 9 slates. Because I played the late. If there's more than 4 games, if there's 4+ games on like the late slate or something, I'll play that as a normal slate. But I won't play the 2 or 3 game like the afternoon slate on Sunday. Like I'll play that because that's a 4-game slate. Mm-hmm. But the experiment is I played 2 lineups on the. Well, I'll caveat this. On the larger slates, I will play 2 lineups on each site. So I am playing a quote cash lineup, but it's not a cash lineup. It is a triple up, quintuple up, 3-man, 5-man style lineup.
A safe lineup.
Right. And then the second lineup is a small field. Something on DK would be like the 121. Like the small field under 500 entry GPPs. But I'll also throw in like they have those 100-man hundos, right? On DK, I play those. I play anything that's progressively paid out. Now, quintuple ups is the other lineup, but like if there's a $12 single entry, 192-man contest, like that's that lineup. And on FanDuel, I do the same thing. So on FanDuel, I'm playing 3-mans, 5-mans, triple ups, 10-mans, 3 out of 10, as long as it pays like a triple up, like one lineup. And then my other lineup is for the same type of thing, the $25 single entry stuff that's like 500 entries or less, the 20-mans that pay top 3, the 100-mans that play top 12, right? Because those you need a 12% to ride top, 88th percentile score. So I'm looking to keep like 15. If you need a top 85th percentile score is one lineup, and if I need like a top 70th percentile score then I need like another lineup. So I'm building 2 lineups. Now, eventually, I could end up building lineups that are like for 3-mans, and then lineups that are for 5-mans, then lineups that are for 100-mans. Then I could have maybe 5 different lineups. But for right now, I'm just concentrating on that and also gathering the data because I'm also on both sides playing head-to-heads and double-ups, but not a large portion of them, just so I could have some data, right? At worst, I'm slightly negative EV in those at worst. At best, maybe a head-to-head matrix, as long as I'm playing a wide array of opponents, may actually be profitable. But that's what I'm testing out. So like I'm kind of throwing them in for experimentation purposes. But theoretically, I shouldn't be playing lineups that are 3 points lower projected than other people in head-to-heads or in double ups. But I don't know. Maybe that's fine. We always see that if you use projections, especially in a highly variant sport like MLB, if you just run like the top 50 optimals from like the bat or wherever you get your projections, the differences between the top one and the 50th one from a median standpoint is typically not much, less than a point. So like you don't realize that expected value for like God knows how long. They're essentially it's within the margin of error of just even the projections in general. So like even if you were to do that, like how much worse can you be than another person? This person's playing the bat optimal and I'm playing the 26 lineup. That is a 3v3 off of that. Like you're probably at worst 50.2 to 49.8, or maybe not even that. You're a marginal 50.005 to like, it's really, really small. But the thing with that is to exploit that, Well, what's the difference between that lineup and the lineup that's 3 points lower projected, 5 points lower projected, 8 points lower projected? Now, in a head-to-head environment, you wouldn't want to do that because let's say, for instance, on average, if you play a lineup that is 5 points lower projected in MLB, let's just say, I don't know what these are the figures are. This is why I'm running the experiment and running some sims and stuff like that. Let's say you're a 55-45 underdog. Let's say you have a 45% chance of winning against one lineup if you play the lineup that is 5 points lower projected than whatever that you expect to be up against, right? Well, what happens now in head-to-heads? Obviously, you're going to lose money in the long run. I mean, obviously, doing that, you're only winning 45% of the time, and you're getting paid. Let's even take out the rake. You're getting paid double.
I was just gonna say, and then there's rake.
Right. Let's just take out the rake to begin with. But let's say you got played triple, and you were playing against the same lineup. So you're 5 points lower projected. You're a 45% chance of beating that lineup. But now both of your opponents in a 3-man have the same exact lineup. Well, you're going to win 45% of the time, but now you're getting paid 3x.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting paid 3x 45% of the time, you are profitable now. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the dynamic of duplicating in 3-mans and 5-mans and very small type of progressive payout structured type of contests are horrible. You're essentially handing over equity to your opponents by doing so. If you duplicate the full lineup, I mean, that you're dead. So like I'm showing, here's a contest. This is from yesterday. It's a 3-man contest. And I'm not doing this to call out people. Like Keep Calm and Tilt On and BK Reader are great cash players on DraftKings. Mm-hmm. Would I play them in head-to-heads? No. Don't seek them out in head-to-heads. But the thing is, I could very well project and predict the lineups that the best cash players are going to play within a 2v2 or something. They're going to be, because I have projections from everywhere, so I know exactly what people are going to do. So if you take a look at my lineup from it's a 3-man. This lineup projected 2.8 points lower than my aggregate optimal lineup, taking projections from everywhere. Okay? Now, you could obviously see we share with my opponents, share Cease, McClanahan, Kirk, and Smith. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, I know you're thinking, well, isn't the point of my experiment is to be as different as possible? Yes. But the second point is, while still maintaining a high projection. When I ran lineups, I found that if I took out either Cease or McClanahan, my projection dropped way too much. Yeah. If I took out Kirk or Josh Smith, it dropped way too much. So it's like I start from the most owned. I go, okay, well, if I don't play Cease, what does the lineup look like now? Well, it projects for now 2.5 points lower just on Cease being missing. It's like that's way too much for one player. If I took out McClanahan, my projection dropped 4 points, which means I'd still have to play most of the batters that everyone else is playing, and just a different pitcher. And I lose 4 points of projection for doing that. This is a lineup, and same for Kirk and Smith. I dropped Smith 1.5 point difference, and Kirk was like a 1.2 point difference. Mm-hmm. So my rule of thumb is if I don't have to sacrifice more than a point, I might as well not have them. Right? So this lineup in total, by being a 1, 2, 3, 4, 6v6, right? To have 6 less players than my opponents would have, and I'm pointing out this 3-man in specifics. But if you went to triple ups or double up, you'd see that, like, wow, if you saw my lineup in cash games, you'd be like, wow, why? Like, other than the pitchers and Kirk and Smith, like, you really, like, you went off the board. Like, some of these guys in double ups were single digit owned. But if I told you, it's like, well, this lineup still only projects 2.8 points lower than lineups that have like 40% owned players in it. You wouldn't think so. You'd be like, oh, this is so weird. But it really isn't that weird. And then if I look at my opponents, and did this one particularly because I could have pulled out other 3-mans, is that look at my opponents. My opponents, yes, they played Cease, McClanahan, Kirk, and Smith, but they played the same exact lineup other than Keep Calm and Tilt On had Sosa as a cheap second baseman, and BK Reader had Jonah Bride at 2,100 as a cheap second baseman. But their entire lineups were exactly the same. And it was like a very popular cash lineup in double ups or whatever. Vlad, Seager, Springer, Sheets, Reyes, right? Basically, I'm essentially playing against it's the perfect situation that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I'm playing against the same exact lineup other than a 1v1, yet I have a 6v6 and I'm giving up 2.8 points of projection. And probably if I simulated this out, I'm going to win this 3-man 47% of the time. Like against the one line, if they both played the same lineup, like against those lineups, I'm like a 47% dog, maybe even less, maybe 47.6%. It's like, dude, but I only have to win this contest at like a 38% rate with the rake to break even.
Yeah.
And if you think intuitively, okay, so we're not even thinking in terms of like, well, the duplication and the 66 and the math is that what ways, if you're Keep Calm and Tilt On, obviously, if they duped, they could only win $13.50 each because if they come in first, they split it. That's not going to be profitable long term, right? We all know that's the collusion. If you wanted to collude, you'd purposely try to dupe someone else's lineup and then have a second account that has a completely different lineup, right? So if you're Keep Calm and Tilt On, you look at this contest. Let's say this is the only contest you're playing, and like this is where my attention is. You'd look and go, wow, I'm in bad shape. How do I win this contest? Well, if Seager hits a home run, well, that doesn't do much for me because BK Reader has Seager. Yeah, it helps us both beat Blenderhead, right? But if Sheets does well, like Sheets did well, that didn't help him against like the only thing that matters to Keep Calm and Tilt On is a 1v1 of Sosa and Bride. Everything else doesn't even matter, other than the fact of they both have to. This lineup has to both beat me, and then Sosa has to beat out Bride. My lineup is not dependent on that. My lineup, like, Smith, these guys don't matter, right? Essentially, I'm playing 6 players in this lineup. I got 6 shots to beat out all of those players, right? So, like, I don't have to worry. Like, if Josh Donaldson hits a home run, I ain't sharing points with anyone. Like, these points aren't being shared by anyone. And, of course, Tellus hits 2 home runs, and that totally helps me out because I didn't have Sheets. Sheets' home run, but I had all these other shots. So for like 2.8 points lower, this lineup is not. This lineup is the most profitable lineup in this contest.
Yeah.
If we were to simulate this 3-man, even though I gave up 2.8 points of projection, I have the most profitable lineup in this contest. This is the concept that this is the experiment. Theoretically, it's sound. Whether it works out in real life, pragmatically, that's what I'm testing. And then looking at the results and then simulating what it could have been and then finding where the line is. Like, really, the whole point of the experiment is not whether or not the concept is sound. The concept is sound. Mathematically, absolutely. Where the line is, right? I gave up 2.8 points in projection. Is actually a more if I would have not played Josh Smith either, and given up 3.5 points in projection, is that even more profitable? Right? If I would have sacrificed 4 points with McClanahan, is that more like, where's the line of how much projection am I willing to give up to eliminate overlap between my lineup and the field's lineups? Because if you took a look at these lineups, like in triple ups, like Reyes was like 56% owned. And Springer was like 48% owned, and Sheets was 38% owned, and Seager at shortstop was 50+%. Like the whole, like half the field had practically the same lineup in a 31-man triple up. And I'm sitting there with like a 6v6 off of it, going, yo, if you guys do well, it's like, dude, some of you may be splitting that triple up money, right? Because the only top 9 out of 31 pay, and you're gonna have to make sure your 1v1s and 2v2. Like the difference if this lineup does well in a triple up, it's quite possible that you don't even cash because Sosa has a 0 and Gorman at second has a 12.
Right.
Or Bride has a 15. Like you lost the 1v1 and you didn't separate yourself with enough points from other people. So now you come in 12th in a triple up. Now I come in like 30th, so that's fine. But it's not a matter of who comes closest to the cash line. Either I cash or I don't. My standard deviation on these lineups are going to be much higher because I don't share as many points with the field. So really the experiment comes down to how much projection you're willing to sacrifice and what's the optimal amount of a lack of correlation intermixed between the other lineups. So maybe I did too much. Maybe I did too little. Maybe I did just enough. Maybe any of those is profitable, but which is the most profitable? So that's why what I'm doing is not for double ups and head-to-heads. I know some people may go, oh, they'll look at my lineup in a double up because I'm throwing these lineups into double ups just to see. And they'll go, oh, okay, I'm going to play like this, but I'm only going to play head-to-heads and double ups. And it's like, mathematically, you shouldn't be doing that. This is only when you're getting paid 3, 5, 10x on your money because you're going to be beating a similar lineup that half the field is playing. Right? Scorpion McScorp in chat right now. Will this work in NFL double ups? This will not work in double ups. Anything that you get paid 2x, 50-50s, head-to-heads, why would you ever play a lineup if your goal is a 50th percentile outcome and you're playing a lineup that reaches the 50th percentile 48% of the time versus a lineup that reaches 50th percentile 50% of the time, how are you ever going to be profitable doing that?
So here's a very, very basic math example of it. If you do this and you think that Blender thinks that his win rate on this lineup is 46% in this contest, okay?
Let's just say, as an example.
Let's say it's 46%. In a 3-man, you only have to win 38 to 40% of the time in order to be profitable.
Right, to beat the rake. Like it would be 33% without the rake.
Right.
Break even, and like 38% with the rake.
Right. So with the rake, 38 to 40%. So if you're winning 46% of the time, that means that you're playing in a profitable way. However, with double ups and head-to-heads, you need to win between 58 and 60% of the time to beat the rake and also be profitable. So this lineup winning only 46% of the time would make you a not profitable player in double ups and head-to-heads with this strategy.
Right. Which is basically purposely playing a lineup that's lower projected for the sake of not having similar players as other people. And obviously there's no like core. I'm not building 5-man stacks or anything because I don't need to win. Like in the 121, I'm building that type of lineup. But in the 3-mans, 5-mans, 10-mans, that type of stuff, I don't need to. I just let me just take a lineup that projects high, that isn't as correlated to the rest of the field. And this is also dependent on knowing what the field is going to do. Okay? Like I've said this before. I said this last week. Because people have been asking. It's like, if this works, this is a game change. Like you can't just do this. You have to know what the field is going to do. And that's one of my core strengths, knowing what the field is going to do. So I looked at like this literal lineup that keep calm until dawn. If I were to play head-to-heads yesterday, this would have been my lineup. It would have literally been my lineup. This is the first optimal lineup from the aggregate projections that I have. It literally is so I have to know if I'm getting this, other people that, especially in the cash lobby in MLB, it's going to look someone like this. And look, BK Reader did the same exact thing. He just had Bride slightly higher projected than Sosa, right? So that's why Bride came up and say. So now that I know that, right? Now that I know what my opponents are doing, they may be playing their portfolio up profitably. I don't want to say optimally, profitably. Because PK Reader is playing like $30,000 worth of volume. I mean, like he's playing this one lineup into everything.
Yeah,
right. So he's some schmuck is taking him up on a $530 head-to-head and playing a lineup that's 5 points lower projected. He's making his money that way. He's making double ups and high stakes and everything like that. But he's also throwing it into 3-mans and 5-mans and 10-mans and stuff like that. And I know that so many people do that. So why can't I go, especially in the low end, $5, $10? I can't play the $3 and $1 contests, right? But I can play the 5s, the 10s, the 25s, the 20s, all of that, and just build up a lot of volume in there. So I play, $800, $1,000 worth of volume, knowing that I know I'm going to be playing against very similar lineups all the time. I obviously cherry picked this one in particular because it explained the point very well. But James, one thing that I'm finding, okay, this is a conundrum. Okay, because I've in practice, I'm actually finding that I may need to solve for something else also in this experiment. Okay, so in this example, I'm showing where I could predict their lineups. Okay, so I have like guys like I knew in this 3-man that I'm going to be profitable in doing what I'm doing. But what about the contest where the third guy, or in a 5-man where the 4th and 5th guy, I'm using guy, girl, whatever, is a poor player. So, and I especially find this on FanDuel more than DraftKings. So what, because I've been looking at my contests. So I'll look at a 5-man, and 5-mans pay just top one. There's nothing on FanDuel. So it's like the top lineup, the bottom 4 get nothing. But even in 3-mans, it's the same way. On DraftKings, second place gets money on 5-mans on DraftKings. So maybe on FanDuel, what I've seen is that it'll be me, it'll be another sharp player that I recognize, maybe 2 sharper players like that play everything, and then 2 people I've liked that may not even have badges. 2 people I've never, I don't know, I don't recognize on FanDuel. And now I'll look at the lineups. I looked at the lineups after the fact, and the 2 sharper players, I guess I know their lineups pretty much, right? And my lineup is like a 5v5 off of theirs. So it sacrificed, 3 points in projection, and they're like a 2v2 maybe between each other, and then I'm like a 5v5 off of them. But I probably still have some of their players because those are the highest projected players, which is fine. If I could get a 5v5 and then still maintain a good projection, and they're duplicated with a 2v2, that's much better for me. But the 2 guys underneath them have I played one 5-man when one person played a lineup that was 17 points lower projected than mine. And then another line that some of these lineups are like 6 points, 7 points lower projected than the optimal, than my aggregate optimal or something like that. Or a 3-man. I'm in a 3-man, and it's me, another sharp cash player, and a rando. And I'm a 5v5 or 6v6 off of the sharp player, but the bad player, I'm also a 5v5 off of, but they also have different players. And their lineup projects for like 7 points lower than my lineup. So in those scenarios, is it profitable? Because if you could find the worst players, shouldn't I just be playing the highest median lineup anyway against the worst players? Why am I sacrificing any projection against the worst players? Because I'm not gaining anything equity-wise, because I'm not sharing players with them because they're playing stuff that I wouldn't even show up in my lineups. Or is it that because I'm less duplicative with the sharp player, but I still have such a high projection off of the bad player, that who is more profitable in that scenario in a 3-man? Let's say, for instance, sharp player A, let's call him McLovin, Okay, he's in everything. We could just call anyone BK Reader, whoever.
Yeah, whatever.
Typically, it's those two primarily. They have a lineup that's 110. I have a lineup that's 107, and the bad player has a lineup that's 100. Now, in this 3-man, like it, McLovin's lineup at 110 isn't being duplicated because I purposely did not play 5 players that he played, and the bad player didn't play 5 players, I don't know, on purpose or not. That shouldn't it be more profitable for McLovin with the 110 projection in that scenario, even though me and him share like 4 or 5 players amongst both of us? The bad player has 100. Like, wouldn't it be better? Like, where's that equilibrium? Because I know, let's say, for instance, I played the same lineup as McLovin. Then technically we both are negative EV, and we actually gave the bad player plus EV, or he's close because his projection is 10 points lower. So he's not going to win as often, but when we win, we split, the 3-man. Do you understand the point that I'm trying to make? That I'm running into a lot of bad players in some of these contests where, like, I can't possibly predict their lineups, and then I plug their lineups into Lineup HQ with my projections, and their lineups are just awful. Like, if this was a head-to-head, I'd rather have the top aggregate optimal. But what is the effect of me changing my lineup in comparison to the sharp players? And then in a 5-man, and let's say there's 2 other sharp players, maybe it's more worthwhile for me to not be duped as much with them, even though there are 2 other bad players in the lineup. I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So for sure, in that instance, the optimal is the better play. Like, without a doubt, in a 3-man, the optimal is the better play.
But no. What I said before about the equilibrium, the optimal is a better play if the lineups were 110, 107, 100.
I'm getting there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You're getting there. Go.
Getting there. So for sure, that instance, the optimal is a better play. If you were to assign win percentage values to that and say that Mach 11 has a 45% chance to win that contest, you have a 40% chance to win that contest, and the rando has a 15% chance to win that contest, without a doubt, the optimal is a better play there because it has a 5% advantage over your lineup, and because it's 3-man, only one person is going to win it. The rando specifically there is just shot, but like your lineup, even though your lineup is likely profitable over the long term, it's not the most optimally profitable route that you could go there. In a 5-man,
no, but you're skipping over the point that I wanted to make about the equilibrium.
Okay, make your point. Yeah.
At the profit of the top lineup, let's just say McLovin's lineup at 110, is directly related to the lineup that I choose to play. So let's say,
right, okay,
right.
Yeah.
So let's say now that I know that a bad player is in, like, let's say I see the 3-man, it's McLovin and Rando, and let's say I pencil in the Rando for a lineup that's 10 points lower than the optimal lineup. Yeah. And let's say I know exactly let's just say I know exactly the lineup that McLovin is going to play, like literally exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to, because the Rando's lineup is so low projected in comparison, if I were to play the same lineup as McLovin, we're both unprofitable. Because you don't want to dupe in a 3-man. So let's say it's a 1v1. Like, are we still not profitable enough because we're sharing 9 players? Like, at what point does the equilibrium of, like, maybe my lineup at 109.68 versus his at 110 makes us a 4v4, and now our lineups are both, even though my projection is lower, we're duped less. That McLovin is game theory optimal because there's nothing I could do to exploit him now with the bad player in there. So maybe he wins at a slightly more rate than very slightly more than me. But like, if I gave up 3 points of projection, I just give up too much to McLovin up there.
Right.
There has to be some type of equilibrium where, like, he wouldn't want me to dupe him, right? So, like, I'm sitting there going, well, I know exactly what he's going to play, and I know that this bad player is awful, but I can't dupe him. But I still want to have a high enough lineup to beat the other guy, but I don't want to beat so low that I'm giving McLovin too much equity. There has to be an equal, because the equilibrium goes to horrible when we're duped. And then it comes back and goes like this. But then as I get further away from McLovin's median projection,
you hit that horrible rate again.
Right, I hit the horrible range again, right? Like, so there has to be something in between. I wish Nerdy Tanner was here. I wish Dan, I think this is something that he could simulate.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to have to back test for that if you want to find the actual equilibrium. Like, off the top of my head, I think that the answer there, and this now comes into how big of a nit you want to be, right? Where you would be having to go into your contests and see who the players are. And if there's a rando and a 3-man versus McLovin, then in that contest, then you take what you presume to be McLovin's lineup, and then you start there, and then you switch to a 3v3 or something, because that, off the top of my head, that probably sounds about right. You'd want a 3v3 in that situation.
Right, you're probably giving up less than a point even doing
right. You don't want to give up more than 2 points in projection off the top of my head. You want to have it be like him having like a 43% chance and you having a 41% chance or something like that.
Right.
And even then, like, it's still not a great situation, because you're still like, oh, well, I am purposely going to be giving up points of equity here.
Right.
That's an interesting.
It could turn out, James. It could turn out that it may be more. It's more in the 3-mans, and we'll get to the 5-mans. But 3-mans are easier to explain because there's only 3 people in there.
Yeah.
That it's quite possible. It sounds the weirdest because it goes against, like, one of the fundamental concepts of playing DFS properly, of like, well, it goes against, and it also goes to, like, the two things. Like, this is why I find these types of experiments interesting, is that the two things in all of these types of games is, one, your profit will primarily, ROI will primarily be decided by the strength of your opponents, not the strength, the relative strength between you and your opponents. But just like in poker, if you were playing against people, no matter how good they are, with their hand face up, you'd never lose.
Right.
You'd never make a bad decision. I'm not saying that you wouldn't lose a hand, but you'd never make a negative EV decision because you could see their hand. So it's quite possible that in 3-mans, that playing against 2 randos may be less profitable than playing against 2 of the sharpest players in the entire lobby.
Absolutely agree.
That if you go in and go, oh, I see BK Reader and McLovin in my contest, in a 2 out of 3, like, that would be maybe more profitable doing something like this than I see 2 people without even a badge.
I had a discussion yesterday, and I've been doing a community conversations thing on my YouTube, and I'll probably talk about that either today or tomorrow. I was having a conversation that the lower dollar contests, I think that lower dollar small contests, and especially the large contests, are considerably more difficult to win, not cash in, not be like long-term profitable, but win, considerably more difficult to win than the higher dollar small field stuff. Because when you look at the way that sharp players are playing, like, I know a lot of what, like, the really, really good players are going to be playing, right? So I can leverage that a lot easier. If I'm in like the $5, 20,000 person contest,
you might as well just play the chalk, right?
There's no way for me to know what these people are going to be playing. So it's taboo to say it, but the higher dollar small field contests, I think, are significantly more predictable and therefore much easier to leverage than things that are small dollar and large field, because the volatility of worse players makes it harder for you to win. So it's a really interesting thought. And
well, what I'm thinking, James, we talked about if you wanted to be a nit, but maybe that would be correct. I make 2 lineups for this purpose, right? So I make two lineups. One is my aggregate optimal, and one is whatever I switch to. And then if I see the aggregate optimal, I can actually play in double ups and head-to-heads.
Right.
And then I also play in any 3-man, any of those types of contests where I see bad players, right? If I see a 2 out of 3 and one, like if I see bad players in contests and I don't see the other sharp players,
right,
I play that lineup. And then when I see as long as one other sharp player's in it, then I play the other line.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say
automatically in 3-mans and 5-mans, but at least the aggregate optimal or whatever you consider the optimal.
Mm-hmm.
You can play. I mean, that would be perfectly fine in head-to-heads and double. Because the worst case scenario, you're flipping coins.
Right. You're flipping a coin on one player, like that situation. It's Levin Sosa versus Jonah Prime or whatever. You just flip that coin, and that's, you make money on that. You would do it that way. You would say in 3-mans where you are up against 2 randos or people that you do not consider to be great players, you just play the aggregate off.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then anything where there is a sharp player, you have to then make that decision. If there's one sharp player, you would almost want to say, Jordan, in this case,
I almost would rather have 2 of them in there.
You would almost want to say in this case that you would want to avoid any 3-man where it's a good player, you, and a rando. Because you cannot possibly build a lineup that is as optimally EV as you would want it to be.
Right. Well, the only that and that creates an interesting dynamic of, let's say it's a 2 out of 3. You go in the lobby, it's 2 out of 3. Sharp player, rando. Well, that almost it makes it that here's the dynamic. Sharp players wouldn't want to join that contest if this is true, because they're more likely to dupe with the other sharp player. But then that also means that the third person is more likely to be a rando, which means the sharp single player in that lineup gets an excess amount of equity. Makes it even more. So that almost makes it more profitable to be the first sharp player in, no matter what.
Yep.
In this dynamic, I don't think people are paying attention enough. That's why, I don't think we've reached the point where we're going to play those types of games. That's why, to me, that's why I said before, it's weird for me to say that it's quite possible. That's why I'm testing this type of stuff out. And when I see a 3-man or a 5-man with multiple sharp cash players in it, I do join some of those because I want to have some of those and some with randos and some so I can compare the two. But I don't want to just go whole hog and it's more profitable to play 3-mans against 2 people that you could almost predict their lineups, and then just go I got to play, because if that's the case, you got a lot of action there if you want it. Right? You understand? That's not just $5 contests. It's if that's true, it's dude, you could start joining $270 3-mans as much as you want, because you're going to find the same group of 5 or 6 people in everything.
Yeah. And I think, somebody who I think has done very well in exercising this is Justin McMahon. His core strategy when it comes to being a profitable DFS player is that he seeks out these higher dollar sharp contests and he actively goes against them. So I think that he is kind of a good, realistic and in practice example of what we're talking about here. I don't know if he has done this on purpose and has done the backup thing that you were doing.
Well, that James, the last thing I was going to say is that it's quite possible. It's actually quite likely. It's not even quite possible. It's quite likely that 2 in a 3-man, 2 sharp players automatically could make the third player's lineup plus EV by accident. The bad player actually has a plus EV strategy completely by accident. Now, obviously, you probably shouldn't play a lineup that's 10 points lower projected, but if that bad player in that 3-man between McLovin and BK Reader has a lineup that's 4 points lower projected with 8 different players, it's
on accident. Yeah.
By accident. It's isn't that what I'm trying to do? I mean, I'm purposely trying to do that, and the bad player accidentally did it. And it's quite possible in the scheme of all of these contests that everyone's playing that the $5 here and the $10 there and everything like that isn't being noticed. And it's not, truthfully, it's probably not worth the time. It's very similar to when I fully admit, especially in NFL, when I'm playing 300 head-to-heads, that someone probably a couple of times a season, someone will DM me out of the blue and say, I played you in a head-to-head and we both had so-and-so and so-and-so left for the late game and you didn't switch. Based on, I listened to your course, shouldn't you be blocked? I'm up on you by 8 points. Shouldn't you be swapping? And I go, I should be, but it's a $5 head-to-head. And I went through my $150 ones first,
Right.
and by the time I get down to the $5 ones, it's lock it. I mean, I ain't getting down there. So that's just the cost of doing business. Like,
Yeah.
functionally, you're just not going to be able to do that.
It's just considered an overhead cost at that point.
Right. But that's what you're exploiting. To me, it's more that you're exploiting that than something that's being consciously done. Because people would say, well, if they know, if these are smart people, these are smart, profitable players, if they know it, why aren't they doing it? It's like, well, if they do it, then I do it, and then they do it, and then someone's going to be playing the optimal lineup, and they're going to be profiting.
Right.
It's like it becomes a game of chicken at that point. And as of this point in the DFS ecosystem, two people playing like in that 3-man that I showed, they will get enough action as instead of me being the third guy, there'll be someone that plays a lineup that's way lower projected. And over the course, this is one 10-man $10 3-player contest. They will find enough action and diversification and bad players that, yes, they're giving up an edge in this specific contest, but it's not exploitable enough over the course of time. But if someone went to the high stakes and bled them more like this, then it'd be more likely that they'd start to adapt. And then once they start to adapt, then you'd have to start to adapt.
And then you go right back to playing the optimal.
Right. Then it becomes the rush to play the optimal. And I think we're going to see that to close out the show. James, guess what happened in my tiebreaker on Saturday?
Was it another tie?
But it was a 2-man tie. It was me and McLovin, of course.
Yeah.
Tied for second. It was a 2 out of 4. So someone came in first, someone came in fourth, and we got the last spot.
Yep.
There's no more tiebreakers because there's no more MMA slates because the round 2 is coming up. So they told us we're gonna have to do an MLB slate. And guess what? It's an MLB tiebreaker against McLovin.
And there we go. And now
isn't this to go back to exactly what I'm talking about? Like, dude, I'll know exactly what lineup. Like, do I play his lineup or not? Do I make the person on DraftKings side have an aneurysm where on tomorrow's slate, like, I'll be the first one to not play chicken game, and I'm just gonna play. I'm gonna play the optimal. I'm gonna play the projected optimal, which I know is what McLovin plays. We're gonna tie.
Yeah.
On a probably, I don't know how many games are on the slate. The person from DraftKings is going to wonder how the hell did you tie in a 12-game MLB slate and go, I guess we're going to have to play another MLB slate. And then I have to decide whether or not do I play, like, what's going to happen? Because this is the main reason why we tied in MMA, because we're playing.
This is what's going to happen. All right. You guys are just going to keep going at each other. You're going to keep duping on MLB, and then it's going to come up to the night before the round 2. Right. And the DraftKings intern, this poor guy, he's on his 7th cup of coffee. He's watched you guys dupe like 10 slates in a row. Y'all duped on main slates. He tried to make you guys go up against each other on a late slate. You duped on that one. He made you guys go up against each other showdown. You duped on that one. And then he's like, I only have one more option. They're going to have to play head-to-head in a League of Legends slate so that they can decide for MMA the next day. Because the League of Legends slates take place at 1:45 in the morning, and it's the last slate that he has before the next
right.
MMA
There's
one.
no more slates left, right?
And then, Jordan, you're going to have to come to me. You're going to have to come to me and my League of Legends knowledge so that you can beat McLovin and get this MMA slate.
Right. And I'm going to do that. You know what's going to end up happening?
And they're going to do. That's perfect.
So I'll be keeping people apprised of this experiment as time goes on. I'll be playing tonight. You can take a look. Whatever lineup I'm playing in whatever contest, you'll see I'm playing, like on DraftKings, I'm playing the 121, and whatever the largest $5 double up or something is, like, I'll be in that. So if you want to see my lineup, but I've not the thing, James, I've really, until I know where the line is, I'm still kind of just judging it by sight. Right. So, like, there are choices where it's like, is it worth getting even more off this like, I could have played Jesse Winker yesterday, but not play Jesse Winker. thought had a probability of being in like 20% of lineups.
Yeah.
Not as much as these guys, but still enough so that's like, well, if I take out Winker, who do I get? And I got a lower own guy, and I only lost like 0.05 in projection.
So
I thought, okay, that was worth it. But
there's actually a really easy way to do this, and you can set up a simulation on this. And you can.
I can't. I mean, someone can. I can't.
I can. I can set up simulation on this easy. I built a little thing like this the other day for a demonstration where you can put in the lineup that you think is going to be the optimal. You put in the aggregate optimal, right? And then you put in whatever lineup you want to play, and then you can run simulations based on their deviations, and you can see.
Hey, well, hold on. Aren't we doing? This is an Excel tool. We're doing.
This is an Excel tool. That's why I'm mentioning it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you're like you're mentioned like I have this thing that I use. I'm like hold on. This is. I hope you're talking about the same thing that I want in where you could just run two lineups against a couple of lineups against each other with like as long as you have like the percentiles, right? Of course, it doesn't take into account this. This is a normal. Basically, you're just simulating a normal distribution.
For NBA, I do actually have a tool where I use the standard deviations that are not normally distributed. But yes, the tool that will be in the course will be a normally distributed tool. So for when Nerdy Tenor buys the book and then he does this and he's like, "Oh, this is normally distributed. This isn't right. Please spare me." It's a basic tool.
It's meant as a blunt tool of like right. If you have the like in our projections, you'll see like floor and ceiling, and it's like. Well, what is the floor and ceiling based on your projection? Some people use 15th and 85th. Some use 25th and 75th.
I use 25th and 75th.
Right. Yeah. So you put that in, you put these three numbers in, and then you just no correlation between the players or anything. It's just like, how many times is what is the score of each lineup 1,000 times? And what percentage of times does one lineup beat the other lineup?
Yeah. And so that's what you would do. Off the top of my head, I think that you'd probably be aiming for like a 47% win rate with this. That's off the top of my head for 3-man.
For 3-mans. And in 5-mans, you need like a 28%.
Yeah.
On average, you're going to win 20% of the time with the rate.
Yeah.
You're going to need 20. You need to win over 22%.
Yeah. So I
as
would
long as it's over 24 to 28, you're
29%. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there.
I'm excited for these little tools.
Yeah, it should be fun. Like I said before the show started, I'm almost done with a pretty good chunk of them, and then I can start. But because the ones that I've been working on, I use the same framework, right? Like it just starts there, and then I can just add little things here and there. The next run of them, the more like self-contained tools, those will take a little bit more time, but those are going to be really, really cool. I'm excited for all.
And this is all open source.
Obviously,
it's in Excel. It has to be.
Yeah.
So if you're good in Excel and you want to add on to it or something
very
for
easy
yourself,
to use
right? Like people could just, like, oh, I want to add this thing but I want to try this thing. Like, yeah, here you go. Do whatever the hell you want. But of course, once you start modifying it, don't tell us for like tech support or anything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I will be there for tech support if necessary, but please, I can't help 1,000 people build out their Excel stuff. And
right. It's more of the fact that the thing that you sent is like that. That's why I mentioned that percent thing. I could see people putting that in and going, I don't know why this doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you need a decimal, and because that's the proper way of displaying it. But
yeah,
whatever. Paydirt_DFS on Twitter.
Yep.
I saw you tweet. You thanked me for actually putting calls to actions on your site.
Yeah. Over at paydirtdfs.com, I put in a lot of work to try to help site engagement and to push things and work on SEO and CTAs and everything like that. And I added a whole bunch of free stuff too. So there's now MLB research sheets. So that if you want to go look at splits for expected home run per 9 and fantasy points per plate appearance and stuff like that, that stuff's all there. So yeah, thank you for the help. It's been massive. It's been really good.
I'll give you one more tip once we're off the air.
Yay. Cool.
I'll give you one more tip.
All right.
You could do. But you could follow James Paydirt_DFS. Follow me at Blender HD. Obviously, a lot of the concepts we just talked about today are in the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. How to think like a professional DFS player. 15-hour audio DFS masterclass. Me and James teach you a structured version of all these types of concepts. 15 hours long. So pick that up. Theoryofdfs.com. We got Grinders Live later today. If you're interested in the baseball slate, MLB, 5 o'clock with Dean and the guys. Then Roth. I think Roth is back. I don't know if we have any weather today. It's hot outside. So there may be some weather. That's 6:20 crunch time MLB, which is free all season, brought to you by FanDuel. And I'll be continuing my experiment tonight on both sites and talk to you tomorrow, reviewing everything and answering your DFS strategy questions like I always do on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.